On Talk Design today, in the special series that we're creating for the AIA Austin Homes Tour, I have Hunt Architecture joining us. Now I have Nick and Brittany, and they are going to take us through their project, Bryker Woods, which happens to be their own home, and they live and work from this home. Nick, Brittany, welcome to Talk Design.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
We're excited to be here.
Hey, I'm a huge fan of the Homes Tour, as many people know. And beyond that, I've been lucky enough, I see all the photos of all the homes. And this is truly special, this home. And I have these conversations with, other people that are outside of the Homes Tour, from members of the AIA to the photographers, people like that. And this home gets a mention at the top of the list every time. So we're going to dig into why. What I'd love you to do is just tell me a little bit about you guys, like why architects, how did you end up here, and a bit of backstory.
Sure. Yeah. So Nick and I are married partners in life and in the office. We met working in New York City at Todd Williams Billy Chen Architects. Cool. And I had moved there from Austin. I went to the University of Texas, was here for about 9 years before moving to New York, and then moved there and met Nick.
I'm from the East Coast originally. I grew up in Connecticut and went to school in upstate New York in New Haven, and then had been in New York for about 6 or 7 years before we met. And
we both had a similar design style, which is, not knowing each other, but what brought us together, working at the same firm in New York. And yes.
So did you end up on projects together in New York, and then like Nick was like giving you the nudge and saying you want to drink with me after work kind of thing?
Pretty much. We met in the kitchen at work.
We did. We were working on the same project, which happened to be the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City, which is a very large project.
Awesome.
Almost 1 million square feet. And we worked on it for 2.5 years, sitting 5 feet apart from each other. And I think got to know each other, personally and professionally at that point. And so when we decided to get married, it was kind of a no-brainer to start a practice together as well.
So then why aren't I talking to you in New York? Why am I talking to you in Texas?
So
who
like
won?
I said, I went to you. Well, clearly I did. I'm from California originally, but fell in love with Austin when I moved here for college, and did both undergraduate and graduate degree here. So I was here for quite a bit of time and kind of fell in love with it, found my place here, and moved to New York really for a job, but always kind of had a vision of moving back here and raising a family in Austin. And when I met Nick, I think it was a slow burn trying to get him to love Austin as well.
She had me fall in love with her before she told me
about Austin. Yeah.
But I quickly also drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And very much. Best decision we've made.
Yeah, we had our first son in New York, and I think that was a big impetus for us to move out and come to a place that has more space and I guess and have a practice. The practice was actually started in New York City at the time by Nick. I was still working for Todd Williams Billy Chen. And then kind of slowly as the practice built and we were in Austin, I was able to join full time. Yeah,
it was kind of the classic example of you start doing a bathroom renovation, and that leads to a kitchen renovation, that leads to the apartment, and then you get a house, and then you realize you can do that on the side. And so it grew pretty steadily and has been growing since, which is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
I had the pleasure of spending 4 days, I think it was, with Todd and Billy. Yeah, a couple of years back. Yeah, phenomenal people. Like, and there were some things that Todd did that were just like, fascinating. I'm not going to recount them, but just really fascinating in the way he called people out on things and called them out on their values and their thinking and stuff like that. And it created such a amazing depth in conversation, like depth and understanding, learning and conversation and thinking. So yeah, fabulous to be around those people.
Yes. And one of the things we really learned from them and took away from our experience there was just something they call the 100-year building. They always talk about building buildings that last and using materials that last and construction methods that last, and that buildings are meant to last 100 years and not to be, 20 years and then rebuild. So we took that to heart, and I think also applied that to our own home. We plan to be in this home for a long time. And
at least 100 years. Yeah.
Yeah, for the next 100 years.
Yeah, for the next 100 at least.
Yeah.
I think sorry, go Nick.
I was just gonna say, we had a special visit. Todd came into town for a lecture at UT, and he came and walked the house with us when it was in framing and came by the studio, and it was a nice kind of full circle moment for us to have him walk through a house that we were designing and building for ourselves. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have to change anything after he had left?
No, surprisingly, no.
He was pretty impressed.
First time, I don't know.
Well, the thing there is that he wouldn't keep his mouth closed if he wanted to tell you something, and you know that, he'd be like, "Yeah, I think you've done a great job here, but what about this?" He'd call you 100%. So that's testament in itself to doing a great job. Really,
we learned from the best. We
really lovely.
Very lucky to be there.
What would you change if you had an opportunity to change it today? What would you go, oh, okay, well, I'll do this?
We joke about it a lot, and I feel really good that this is our answer, but the only thing I would change right now are the doors.
All right.
We cheaped on the doors, and if I could go back, I would have done the more expensive doors. But honestly,
budget's budget.
Yeah,
budget's budget. It was very real.
I think we designed this house with the understanding we had 2 kids at the time while designing this house. So our family didn't grow after designing the house.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we were able to take those needs into account before the house was built. And I think another thing that was really important in the design of this is taking the neighborhood into account. We had the opportunity to live on this lot for close to 5 years before we built this house. We got to know our neighbors. We got to understand how people, move through the neighborhood and all the intricacies of this historic neighborhood. And I think that really informed our design process and makes it so, honestly, I wouldn't change anything at the moment.
Also the light, like we knew all the special spots, the evening light, the morning light, we knew where all that came in at the best times. And so we were kind of able to craft the spaces around that. I
do feel really lucky and think that we had a lot of insight into this particular piece of land and our own family. All of our other projects are for other families that are not our own, and we do our best to learn the living patterns of our clients, but nothing quite compares to knowing your own and knowing your children. And
it doesn't matter how high you lift the rug, there's still something that you go, oh, really? But I love that. I love to ask clients that question, my own clients that question, okay, so now we've got the house, you're here, you've been here 2 years, whatever. What would you change? What did we do wrong? What could we done better? And if we did something wrong, that's always really kind of frightening. But usually it might be, well, what we've discovered is we don't use this room the way we thought we would. We're using it this way, or we do this with this, or this. We can't believe that we maybe argued not to have this piece, and you insisted. We use it every day. We use it every day.
And we've been here a year, and I think it's still, those things are still popping up slowly as we evolve. The kids get a little bit older, and we can talk through some of those when we walk through.
Cool. Cool. You said about the neighborhood, and one of the things that I think is so magical about Austin as a town, and I say that as a town, not a city, as a town, it has incredible neighborhoods. They're really community style neighborhoods as well. There's ones that are more diverse, and the people are kind of off on their own, but certainly around central part of the city where you guys are, they're incredible, these neighborhoods, walking neighborhoods, and there's a community feel that you don't get everywhere. So tell me Yeah, tell me about Bryker Woods, making the decisions about the house, and then let's talk about the house.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would go back, pretty far to just living in Hyde Park in college, kind of understanding what a historic neighborhood is in Austin and how special they really are. The housing stock is unlike anywhere else, and there is a value to the historic architecture when you are in a historic neighborhood. And
Mhm.
so I remember when we moved here, I said to Nick, I'm not sure where we're going to live. We started renting in Hyde Park because that was familiar.
Sure.
And as far as buying a house and buying in a neighborhood, my only criteria was that it was in a historic neighborhood. And
Yeah,
the reason
nice.
for that was that they are more sensitive to new building, and there's lots of neighborhoods in Austin. The housing stock that was put up in the early 1900s up to the, 1940s wasn't built to last this long. And so a lot of them and weren't taken care of over the years. And so they fell into disrepair. And so I don't blame people for building new houses. What I am not as happy about is the lack of care. I think that is going into rebuilding in these neighborhoods, central Austin neighborhoods.
And a lack of context, like
Lack of
paying
context.
attention to scale and materials, and it's not so much the craft, although there's complaints about that too, but it's more, I think, the scale and
the context of the neighborhood. Yeah.
Context of the neighborhood. And so I think for us, when we purchased this lot 5 years ago, it was really about the neighborhood. It wasn't about the house at the time, though we did live in it. We fell in love with the neighborhood, fell in love with our neighbors, and ultimately our plan was to move when we grew out of the house. And everybody knows, what happened in 2020, 2021.
Mhm.
The housing market went crazy and we were kind of busting at the seams it was a 1940s bungalow, about 1,200 square feet. We had 2 kids, our business was growing, and we kind of looked at each other and we're like, do we do a renovation? What do we do here? Because we can't live in it the way that we are. And so that was the impetus for the back house. And actually that was built slightly before 2020.
we got lucky. It was finished right as COVID was
We
coming.
did, but
Right.
we built the back house to at least get our office out of our main house, and that afforded us some extra space in our house. And then, quickly again, we grew out of that, and it just became clear that building a house on this lot was going to be the best option for our family and for our budget. And again, it was really, once we were in this neighborhood, it was hard to leave. So, going back to the idea of being in a historic neighborhood, the last thing I think we wanted to do was to knock down a historic house. Our house was definitely not, it was built in 19...
not a quality historic
but it
house.
wasn't, let's call it a contributing structure.
Yeah,
It was not a contributing structure. And it had its fair share of problems that I don't need to go into, but we really prioritized moving the house off the lot so it could be reused. The biggest issue with our previous house was the foundation. And so when you move the house off the lot, you give somebody else the opportunity to have the house on a new foundation. And so
Awesome.
we donated the house, and it was purchased by a retired school teacher, and she moved it about an hour away to Smithville. And we recently got pictures, and it's put back together, got a fresh coat of paint. She put a front porch on it, and it looks great.
Amazing.
Awesome. I love that story.
And I think that is it's an important place to start, I guess, for our new house.
Yeah, I think the story of this lot is not just the new house, it's kind of the evolution it's gone through for our family and for the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think that's really important part of the story, as you say, because it's also a part of your ethics and a part of your values of how you approach. And
very much so.
And doing that, there's a whole lot of sensibilities that are for the benefit of other people, the planet, your neighborhood, keeping community, all those things. I love the fact that it had to be a historic neighborhood. I bet you, if my wife had said that to me, I would have rolled my eyes and gone, "Oh shit, here we go." But anyway,
you probably did.
There was plenty of eye rolling, but I mean, looking back, I'm happy.
You can't beat the trees in this neighborhood either. The old growth trees in these historic neighborhoods is a really beautiful backdrop to just about anything you build.
Yeah.
So I guess
take me on a little journey. So I'm gonna
Mhm.
rock up in some sort of transport. In
Mhm.
fact, I'm running a tour. I'm gonna rock up in luxury transport. I'm not even gonna look for a park. I'm gonna have somebody drop me off with all my tour guests. So that's beside the point. But for most people, they're gonna rock up. They're gonna find a park. There's gonna be. They're gonna walk down the street, whether that's from the left or the right.
Mhm. You can also
They,
walk straight up, that where
Yeah.
where it
okay.
is kind of dead end. It's at the end of a
Okay,
dead end.
perfect. Like a cul-de-sac. Yeah.
No, and there's a through. It's like a T. It's
Okay,
basically
cool.
we're at the end of the T. But
So,
I think
so I was going to say, so with that, when you get out of your car, you'll spot the house. There'll be some signs. There'll be some people that are coming as well. So then when you look at that, tell me what to pause and look around in your neighborhood first to sort of give yourself that orientation. Like, what's
Mhm.
that first point of orientation? What are the homes around you? You know, what will people see and recognize on the way to your place?
I think one thing that's really important is you'll notice a lot of one-story structures, and that was something that we took into account pretty heavily. We could have built more on our lot as far as square footage goes, but we did not want to build a two-story house and tower over our existing neighborhood. I mean, our existing neighbors.
Mhm.
And so I actually think the thing that's most important is that you don't necessarily notice the house right away. And that was a goal of ours, that it would blend in and not stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, it's of the neighborhood.
Yes.
Yeah, the scale is very much of the neighborhood. The materiality is very much of the neighborhood. I think the articulation is a little more, modern, clean lined. It
It's
has a mix of,
it's for 100 years.
yes.
Yeah. So I think, if you were to look around, you might see, our next door neighbors, or you might see wood siding in the horizontal orientation, and we did wood siding in the vertical orientation. You
Sure.
might see bricks, and we, a standard brick size, and we chose to do brick, but we made it like a longer linear proportion. So I
Sure.
think we
Yeah.
took some classic materials and ones that are very much of the neighborhood and put a little bit of a modern
Yeah.
twist on them.
And I
Nice.
think that the kind of at approach, the house kind of hides it looks like a rather small, modest house, which it is, but it hides kind of the volume and the experience when you open the front door. Like, I
So-
don't think you
And I think
expect that in that house from the
I think that,
outside.
there's a lot of surprises with it. So let's do that. So
Yeah.
we've arrived and we are on the footpath and we are about to walk up the front. If you want, by all means, share a photo here of that front facade because it's quite fabulous. It's got great privacy, and we'll describe it kind of, like because the front walls and the garden that leads you in. I'll let you guys describe the photo. For those who aren't listening, you can go, are listening but not watching, you can go on YouTube, on our YouTube channel and see the photo, but we'll describe it so that you can visualize it anyway.
Definitely. So one of the things on approach that was important, in addition to the house, was the landscape and having it feel like kind of a natural native landscape that you meander through. There's no hard paths. There's these stepping stones that eventually will be grown in a little bit in the landscape. And then the grass cuts through the path. So it gives intentionally a place for our kids to kind of run across the yard and trip over the stones, which they did when they were younger kids.
In our old house.
In the old house. And you approach the front door on axis from the path, and it's a solid wood door. It kind of brings the wood from above down to the lower portion of the house.
Yeah.
There's that side light glass piece to the left, which allows you, in the photo, you can see all the way through the house at that point. It doesn't give everything away, but it gives a glimpse.
Just gives you a glimpse all the way to the back.
Yeah, but the front
It's a teaser.
Is relatively solid. I think that we are not that we're overly private people, but there are a lot of people in this neighborhood that walk. It's a very pedestrian friendly neighborhood. On any given morning, you'll probably see 20 people walking their dog in front of our house. And so I think part of that was part of the solidness on the front was response to just how much traffic is in front of our house.
The windows are very intentional, like we said, the side light. The small window to the right is just above the sink in the mudroom that kind of gives a high view out. And then on the left, that window looks into the kitchen, but also kind of looks directly out at the cedar elm in the front, which we planted for our son when we lived in the house previously. So that was one of the few things on the lot that we made sure was retained when they were demoing the house and protected during construction.
Yeah. I think that the house, it's intriguing because it's got, those two like structures that sit slightly forward that they're the brick, aren't they? So they're in the brick. Yeah.
Correct.
And then with those, the one on the left gives you the opportunity to get glimpses of life behind, but filtered glimpses. And then the one on the right leaves you with mystery. And then through the middle, I know what's inside the house. So then it's actually a bit of a beacon. It on the side of the door, that side light really offers an opportunity to see something else. I love the garden and the way that it spills, and then also that you cross over a piece of lawn so that you're on a real journey, well-defined journey to the front door. So
that was another thing that is important about the landscape really quickly was that we really prioritized native plants in the landscape in order to reduce our water consumption and also allow the plants to survive beyond our now harsh winters that we have. In the last few years, we've been getting a lot more freezes. We're no stranger to, the drought weather in the summer, but it's really the freezes that have been getting us in the last few years. So it was important to us to really be mindful of the landscape and choose one that would last.
I think it's beautiful to be able to do that, and not just for all those reasons, but it's also of the place. It's of Texas. It's of Austin. It's hill country. It's of its space, and it grounds the whole home. The house, just from the front photo, the house is very grounded.
It provides also, like, I think, a contrast. The idea was that the landscape would be more wild, and I think when you look at the facade of the house, it's quite composed and rectilinear. Those front boxes are quite geometric, I would say, and so when you see them together, it provides sort of a nice contrast.
It makes me think of, when interior designers are dressing a bed and they, either fold a blanket perfectly across the end of the bed, or they do one that looks like it's been sort of screwed up and looks like it's more kept. And it invites you kind of, it's got that movement and texture and everything else. But then you've got sort of like this, as you said, rectilinear sort of box piece behind it that's strong. So we're going to end up with our shoes off after the lawn, I'm guessing. We're going to get all the way down there, and then we're going to have a big pile of shoes, and into booties or socks and inside. So if you'd share the one of what we're going to see when we walk inside, because that's going to be like that next point when you go, wow, can we get to it?
Keep going.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think this is the looking back. So
is that
you can see the front door.
Yeah, at the back there. Yep.
Yeah. So as you come in the space, I don't think we have the one looking straight through. You're obviously encounter this skylight that kind of is a spine throughout the house here, and then steps down into the living room in the back. And this really helps to accentuate kind of moving all the way through the house. You see out to the backyard, to the studio.
I think that
in the back,
you're going to have a traffic jam with the door will be open most likely anyway, but the traffic jam will be, everybody will stop and look up into the skylight because it's so long, and because you've got the beams that are running across that, draw your eye up into it and give you that volume as well as the flood of light that fills the room.
That was one of the first things that we had decided on with this house, was having a skylight in the center of the house. And that really came from our living in our previous house on this lot and living on a lot that's only 50 feet wide. A lot of the projects that we do, we like to pull apart the pieces so we can get light from multiple sides, but on a lot this size, we weren't afforded that luxury. And so the house is quite compact, but a square is kind of the most inefficient way to get light into the center. And so for us, bringing light in from above was one of the very first things. It was a necessity, and it allowed us to bring a lot more light into what is traditionally the darkest part of the home on one of these plots.
But what it also does, it highlights a walking zone, not an area you're sitting in necessarily, and so you're not, baking or sitting under that direct sun all the time. It's kind of illuminating the edges of the kitchen and the space.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel harsh or uncomfortable at all.
It also, we rarely get like super direct light from there. The way it's facing is towards the west, but once the sun is on the west side, it's usually a lot lower in the sky by that point.
Right.
So
it's
we're not
filtered.
getting, it's mostly filtered light through there, and it bounces off. There's an angled ceiling, wall ceiling next to it. And so the light sort of bounces in between there and creates a really even, soft, natural
Nice.
light. All throughout the day, we always say, like, we never turn on our lights. We don't need to until it's actually nighttime.
Which helps with a lot of efficiency. And the other thing is that it would really help with your circadian rhythms. Like living in the home, you are living with the light that's outside constantly. So it's the closest to nature you can kind of get without having to be fully exposed. I imagine that mornings feel very different in this home than afternoons and evenings, like the transition during the day as that light shifts, you'd be very, very aware. Often homes you walk into and they feel not the same, but very similar, during every day. Whereas this, you would be way, way more engaged, and it must be incredible when it's raining.
Yes, the sound. It's
and on a night with a full moon, that's really quite fun. When kind of all the lights are off in the house and you walk out and you see straight up. That's one of my favorites.
I was gonna say
nobody's gonna get that on the tour, but
I know, bummer.
Well, unless they hide in a closet,
One of the other things too that we decided pretty quickly was, in our previous house, the kitchen was on the west side of the house, and the light in that kitchen was always really bad. And so we made a move to move it to the east side of the house. So we did get that morning light in there, and it really does change the way that space feels and makes us want to be in there a lot more.
Yeah, I think that, and then you've got the wall in the kitchen. Tell me about that.
So the brick continues on the inside of the house for that long wall. So from kitchen down into living room. Yeah. And you can kind of see the brick returns into the window on both sides. So it gives the illusion that it's a true full brick wall. We all know it's not actually a full masonry wall, but we wish it was. We wish it were. But we wanted to make sure to bring kind of the richness of the materials inside and not be, just creating white box. We want that warmth and that scale on the inside of the house.
As we practice both architecture and interiors, and it's really important for us to design them together at the same time using similar materials. And we feel that helps tell an entire story when the interior and the exterior are in communication with each other. So this was one way that in this house that you
held that story throughout. So it combines every piece of it. I think it works really beautifully. You're transitioning under a roof when you come through the front door from the garden, and the landscape is such interior, and the interior changes, but you're so connected to the outdoors with the views that you have, and then holding that same story. It's not like you've done a transition to another land. It's like you're still within that whole neighborhood feel. It looks really beautiful. I love the exposed beams that you've done as well, and the way you use them through the skylight.
I think that helped us too. When we have one continuous ceiling plane, that's probably, 40 feet long. And though the floor steps down, so you can feel the difference in the two spaces, the ceiling is continuous. And so by putting the beams in there, it helps to break up that surface and create a rhythm.
Yeah.
To allow it to move.
Scale to the space.
And lots of shade and light that it creates as well, which I think is really lovely, like really, really lovely. So we come through the front door. On one side, we've got the mudroom.
So the house.
Mudroom and pantry. My personal favorite room in the house, actually.
That's where we'll find you in the mudroom.
That's where I'll be, yes.
That's one of those things that we were talking about, you know, when it's your own house and you dictate exactly where every piece goes. I think that room was planned to a T.
Meticulously.
We're like, these are our shoe bins.
This is where our shoes go when you walk in the door.
And this is where the kids wash their hands the second they come in.
Oh, yeah.
And so
we really thought about how we live and like our patterns when we designed. And so the house is really a reflection of our daily rituals, our daily life.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important factor, you know, like, because that's what you're doing with clients as well, is you're digging in to find out these, you know, the intimate parts of how they live their daily life so that you can make the flow and the ease of it. And you can, with the experience of design, having designed so many things, you can take all the experience of others and put those suggestions as well into that space, as well as, so you're always innovating it and creating something special from it. It certainly, you know, when we get to practical, you know, functional spaces, this home is a fully practical functional space. It's not like it's designed to be a gallery or designed to be something else that you're living in. It's a working home.
Yeah, I think one thing we didn't mention was yet on here is the size of the house is just over 2,000 square feet for the main house and 400 square feet in the back house. But, you know, for a family of 4 to live comfortably in 2,000 square feet, it needs to be really thoughtful. And we also are, you know, pretty minimal people. That doesn't mean we don't have things. It just means that we have a lot of storage, and we planned, you know, we had drawings that showed where every single item that we own are going to go.
The kids' art was labeled on our construction drawings.
Yeah.
I love it.
So that allowed us, you know, that sense of customizing allowed us to live in a smaller house and live minimally, which is how we prefer to live.
Yeah. I think going back to kind of the stories of the bathrooms and apartments in New York City, like we started this practice working in tiny, tiny spaces and trying to maximize every inch and be super efficient. And I think it comes naturally to us. And this house is kind of an example of that.
Yeah, we're bigger. Bigger is not always better. I think we think a lot about the size of the human body, especially in homes that are occupied by usually just a few people. And it's really easy to oversize things, especially when you have the space to. But we find that by, you know, sizing each component of the house in relationship to the size of the body, that it's a much more comfortable way to live.
Again,
huge island.
Yeah, you gain efficiencies from doing that. But it doesn't mean you go without. It means that you just have less, you know, movement, I suppose, through the spaces, because you gain efficiencies, which ultimately makes it more relaxing to live in. That you don't work as hard to live in a home. You know, you often think of some big homes, and I know I've designed some where literally they live in, you know, one bedroom and a piece of the home rather than all of the home. And the home expands and contracts according to whose home and who's going to be there. So I think those sensibilities are really lovely.
That's a good point. We definitely touch every part of this home every day. There's not really a space that doesn't get used on a daily basis.
That's cool, isn't it? I mean, it works. Having 2 boys, I imagine it's, you know, has a fairly robust nature.
It does. You'll notice we don't have any white sofas. We definitely, you know, took into account 2 young children. Nothing is too precious in this house. I think, you know, the one thing we were most worried about was the sharp concrete corners of this concrete divider wall. But so far nobody's, you know, hit their
nobody's
head
died.
on it.
Yeah,
nobody's died yet.
Yeah.
They do jump all 4 stairs though, that you
Of
see
course.
here,
The
a
boys.
running, it's like a nice runway for them. They run and jump down there. So, but I think, yeah, this house is not precious, but it is composed and it is made of solid, natural, real materials that hopefully will age well. And
I'm going to bring the boys a couple of skateboards so they can skateboard and do that, and then use the side of that concrete structure where the sofa is as a grind rail. Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll see
perfect.
how you go
After the tour.
Yeah.
after the tour. Yeah, exactly. Tell me about designing, the other rooms in the home. Obviously, you've got your primary bedroom and ensuite and stuff at the back, looking into the garden. Tell me about putting all that together and creating enough separation and privacy.
I think honestly, our bathroom, our kind of private space is one of my favorite spaces. And I think it's really an example of us putting in only what we thought was important for ourselves. It's a smaller bathroom by most standards. There's only one sink. There's no tub. It's just a vanity with kind of walk around shower and a toilet room. The shower is all plaster and has a beautiful skylight inside of it. It's a very serene space. But
actually, it's a very good point. When you go in the home and you're touring, go and have a look in the ensuite. Don't even give it away here. Don't even give it away here. Don't give it away here.
I won't.
Go into the ensuite and have a little look up and get the magic that's baked into the space.
Yeah, it's a fun getaway from kids.
Yeah, and I think too, when we were designing this and talking with contractors and consultants and all these people who had opinions about our own home, they were like, "Are you sure you don't want 2 sinks? Are you sure you don't want a bathtub?" And we're like, you know what?
Yeah,
we're
sure.
not looking at them. And for us, the entire house was really an exercise in prioritizing quality over quantity, and we really wanted to prioritize, like I said, whole real materials, natural stone and lime plaster and real wood floors and all of that. And so those were the trade-offs that we had to make in order to have the types of materials that would last a long time. We had to kind of cut back on certain other luxuries.
Yeah,
I think the other part, because the house is small, guests kind of occupy a lot of the spaces that we do, and so the kids' bathroom doubles as the powder bathroom and the guest bathroom, and so
yeah, cool.
It had to do triple duty where it had to still be playful and fun for kids, but also presentable enough for a powder bathroom. And that was a challenge. I think that was one of the bigger challenges of the whole design process.
We redesigned it probably 10 times, and if most people, when you look at it, it looks like a floating vanity, but there are some hidden supports under there because I knew our kids would be jumping on top of it.
Yeah, be sitting on it, jumping
Yeah,
on it.
sitting on it, and sure enough, they do. So,
but
yeah.
even in that room, we wanted to bring a skylight into the space and let the mirror kind of extend up into the skylight pocket, and just have little unique moments that make it more than just
another magical moment, like this playing with the light from above and creating dimension and texture. Again, like in this home, when you come in, experience it, take pause, breathe out, have a look, and look at how much the roof structure and the sculpting of the skylights add dimension without it all having to come from the sides in the home. When we're inside and we're down in the living area, before, when you took me through the floor plan, as you said, like you transitioned as the block drops from the front street down lower towards the back where your studio is, you put these different transition points so that you'd be much closer to the ground as you come out the back. And again, that's like thoughtful use of the space, but then carrying the roof plane through at the same height, just increasing the volumes as we go backwards, or when I say go backwards, as we progress down through the home. Take me out to, what happens, and don't need photos of it, but to the studio. Actually, if you go back to you guys as full screen, then and we'll be able to see this, a part of the studio as well, because this is going to be on the tour as well. This is a a work at home space.
Just enough space to in the home and our office that it really does feel like we're going to an office, except we don't have to commute, and
Just a short commute.
it's just a short commute across the grass. It's a really nice way to live. I think both of us, after commuting in New York City, I was there almost 6 years and he was there 11, commuting 45 minutes to and from work every day on a subway. This is really enticing for us. And that was, I think, a big impetus for us to create a place where we can live and work in the same place. That was important for us.
I think it's also good. It's special to be able to, we host a lot of clients and have meetings here. And it's really nice to be able to bring a potential or a new client into a space that you've designed to let them, see how you would do things and touch real materials. And
so you bring them through the house?
Yeah. I mean, it's a newer thing now.
Down through the front path and then all the way to the studio.
Yeah.
We've done,
Nice.
We always, that means the house has to be clean all the time, which is a downside. But
well, at least you can pick the days, you can go, okay, cool. Right. We know what we're doing tonight because we've got clients in the morning.
Yeah.
I think it's really lovely to be able to do that. And the fact that you journey them through from the garden and then through along under that skylight, down the stairs, and then throughout the back of the home, and then through the garden again to get to the studio, you really take them on a journey and they get to see your plays with light as that happens. And whether they've got a home that's on a big block, that light's going to be coming in from the side and above, wherever, it just shows the sensibility of being able to design for a neighborhood and for a space and create something particularly magical out of that.
Very clear that this house is for this lot in this neighborhood. It's like this house wouldn't work everywhere, but
and nor should it.
Nor should it. Yeah.
Nor should it. This is the thing. If people are embarking on a new home or renovation or any of these things, all too often the siting and how the house responds to the siting, unless it's done really thoughtfully, affects every piece of the living from that time on. And so I'm a big fan of, you were talking before about the lime plaster work and, these natural materials as well. So the house is breathing and living with you and the circadian rhythms that it creates. So you're creating a space that has baked in wellness to it, as well as the joy that it brings and the ease that it brings. And, there'll be grander and smaller homes on the tour and, in size and stuff. I go, look at the thoughtfulness of this home and how it operates so beautifully. So
I think it's special to have kind of the range of homes on the tour and and for this to be an example of kind of a smaller,
maybe more attainable way to live and aspirational. I mean, at least for me, as far as not aspirational necessarily the way that it looks, but that you can live in a 2,000 square foot house as a family of 4 and live very comfortably and beautifully and happily.
Yeah.
And also be of your neighborhood, of your community, which again, I think all too quickly gets lost with gentrification and all these things. We want the things that belong, yet they get lost so quickly. I think I'm really looking forward to this home, like on the tour, like super looking forward to it.
Oh, thank you.
I was well primed as well. I mean, they're all fabulous. Like I've spoken to all the architects, they're all fabulous homes. There's no doubt about that. But I was well primed with this because everybody that had been on the selection committee and stuff had said, oh, wait till you see this. wait till you experience this. And so that's really lovely. And the fact that Todd didn't have you redesign it after it was at framing stage. You did well.
At least thought of it. We would have thought about it at least.
Guys, thank you so much for sharing. I look forward to meeting you on the day at your home.
Thank you.
Great.
Same to you.
Cheers. Stacey, this next home that we're talking about is Bryker Woods. And this house, I totally get what there is to love about this home. It is Hunt architecture, which is Brittany and Nick. And I want you to take me on the journey of how you discovered this house and what it meant to you. And share a photo by all means.
Yes, I would love to. Okay. So this photo that we're looking at, we are looking towards the front door.
Yep.
And entering the house. It's a great little neighborhood. The house is, it looks great from the street, but you open the door and you are just have this, the entire room is so light filled because of these skylights that run the length of it. And the way that the light falls down the wall is just beautiful. And from the moment, the site visits, when we visited the house and, you open the door and see that, it was just like, just so lovely. This house is just all about the light. Yes, Brittany and Nick hunt, and it's also their house that they live in. And their studio is in the back that they work out of, which is also on the tour. And it's a beautiful space. They did the studio and have been working there and then did the house. And it was here multiple times of the day. And I wanted to be there in the morning. The light was so good. And I was photographing all of these things. And then in the afternoon, I'm like, oh, and the light's still so good. It was just great the way it moved through the space. And this house definitely felt really good to be in. Yeah. And they were great to work with.
Something I love about in this particular photo is, obviously the long skylight, and it's the rhythm that is set up from the beams that run across. The temptation to hide that structure. Instead, that structure makes it feel more intimate. And then that softness of all the light that floods in on top of you from there. I can imagine as you come through the door, as you said, it's like you've got this long skylight that is flooding light down. I imagine you see stars at night through it as well, and moonlight as well.
I can imagine that you would.
It would be pretty amazing to, like on a really full moon night, to see how much light it brings into the home.
Have the shadows come down. And that's the other thing the rafters can do. Those beams kind of create these beautiful shadows.
And it's their own home, you say?
Yes.
Do they have kids?
They do. They have 2 young boys.
Yep.
And just created a really, this beautiful space that works for them, that works for the family. And I love, the elements, this built-in sofa that you can see.
Yes.
There are the personal touches, but that also feel very universal.
It's it's an interesting thing when you go into an architect's own home, because in designing houses, you get to experience lots of different things that other people want. And people always say to me with my own home, they say, so, well, what kind of house do you live in? And I go, well, my house is like this. And they go, oh, imagining in their minds that I can live in any house that I want, because I can draw any house. But the fact is that the house is governed by the site. And it's also governed by the budget, and it's governed by not just me, I've got a wife as well. And so it's got to meet all these other needs. And when you're both designing, it's going to be a fun chat when I chat to them, because the push and pull of who won what conversation, or not won it, but like what was the overriding piece, because you always want the tension in the design so that you explore. And whose idea what piece was, and then they work in there as well. So I think it's a real treat to go into an architect's own home, because they also tend to be a little bit exploratory, as a bit of a laboratory for their own ideas in general. So I think really cool, really cool. And as you say, a house absolutely filled with light.
Yes, it really is. And I mean, I'm a sucker for good light, that's for sure. So, but yeah, it was we had a great time shooting. They were great to work with. And yeah, it's a really beautiful space. I think people are gonna, definitely enjoy being in the space.
And if you had to choose a piece of this house, a spot in this house, what would it be? Would be your favorite? And
I may repeat myself, but again, we are, I might say the kitchen. It's behind this wall, you know, in the like entry area, you kind of walk into the kitchen. And I, you know, I love a big kitchen that's kind of a center of the house. That's how it is for me. That's how, you know, I like to cook. And my daughter does her homework at the dining table. That's what I think of and how I live. And, you know, it's a beautiful space and with a big island. And I think that's going to feels like the heart of the home.
Heart of the home. You know, an interesting thing with you loving cooking and loving kitchens, you're probably fairly critical around them as well. And so, and you know, like in the case of each house, you always imagine yourself being in the kitchen because it's a part of who you are and a part of how you give and see the world. I'd be really interested to know, not now, maybe at some point you tell me the different emotions it evokes. And when you go, like, you know, this is going to be 9 houses long, this little series. So in each one of them, if the emotions shifted in how you felt about the kitchen or how you imagined being able to, like you just gave a really beautiful description of your family, you know, your daughter sitting at the bench doing her homework while you're cooking and being able to help her. And, you know, it's a connective space where you're both active, you know, you both got tasks, and that will evoke a certain emotion in you. And there'll be some that where you'll probably go into houses where you go, oh, this wouldn't do that for me. It wouldn't fulfill that part, but it might fulfill a different one. It might fulfill another part of you, and it might shift the emotion. Anyway,
I like that.
Yeah, and I can't wait to be in this home. It's a modest-sized, beautiful, light-filled home. So, yeah, and I love the built-in sofa. I love that. That's cool. That's really cool.